This is how the film 12 Angry Men begins, with the camera panning up, following the massive pillars of the New York City courthouse, up to the load they firmly bear. The inscription: Administration of justice is the firmest pillar of good. It's pulled from a letter written by George Washington. The full quote reads, "The true administration of justice is the firmest pillar of good government." Yet, the camera, placed so far below, can only read this limited version. Why did the director film it this way? Like so many other aspects of this film, the answers come by observing the greater picture. Why this shot omits 3 words from its subject is done for the same reason the movie itself was written. In a deliberate way, a message has been hidden here for us. And to understand it, let us delve into the cinematic fabric of 12 Angry Men. It won't take long, just about 9 minutes of your time. Just in case you haven't seen the film, which I highly recommend you do, let's go over a quick overview of the plot. That way you'll know what I'm talking about when I reference specific scenes. And of course, spoilers ahead if you haven't seen it. In essence, 12 Angry Men is about a jury of, 12 men tasked with deciding the fate of a Puerto Rican immigrant boy, 18, accused of the premeditated murder of his father. If found guilty, he will be put into the electric chair. Curiously, the film doesn't show anything from the boy's trial. It simply picks up with the 12 entering their jury room, sweltering in the New York summer heat. It's odd, considering the task that they must fulfill. It's as if to say what happened during the trial isn't what's most important here. It's what these 12 characters are about to do that really matters. While we're on the topic, let's get acquainted with some of the jurors I'll be referencing soon. First, we have juror number 3. He's an excitable, loud man whose motives are a little unclear until the end. Then we have juror number 8, who is relatively upfront about his motives, is thoughtful, confident, and deliberate. With some of our characters identified, let's continue on with the plot. The 12 call for a preliminary vote, and 11 of them vote guilty. Only one, juror number 8, votes not guilty. And for the rest of the film, they argue over this, and they keep going over evidence until eventually, all 12 vote for acquittal. Don't be fooled by the apparent simplicity of this plotline. A tremendous amount of nuance permeates it. And though I can only cover a few pieces of it here, I will highlight some of what I feel are the more important ones. The first would be a moment from where juror number 8 explains why he voted not guilty against the others.
Boy, you really think he's innocent? I don't know. I mean, you sat in court with the rest of us. You heard what we did. The kid's a dangerous killer. You could see it.
He's 18 years old.
Well, that's old enough. He stabbed his own father 4 inches into the chest. They proved it a dozen different ways in court. Would you like me to list them for you?
No. Then what do you want? I just want to talk.
Well, what's there to talk about? 11 men in here think he's guilty. No one had to think about it twice except you.
I want to ask you something. Do you believe his story? I don't know whether I believe it or not. Maybe I don't.
So how come you vote not guilty?
Well, there were 11 votes for guilty. It's not easy to raise my hand and send a boy off to die without talking about it first.
What I'd like to point attention to is the manner by which he explains his motivations. His belief isn't necessarily that the boy is not guilty of the crime, but just simply that a life is worth the discussion. One of the wonderful aspects to 12 Angry Men is its purposeful uncertainty about the truth. It doesn't show the murder, nor even the trial itself. It is only focused upon the jurors and their varying levels of certainty about the truth and how and why they arrive to these levels. As for my certainty on why this is the case, let's consider one of the final scenes from the film, where juror number 3, the very final holdout against a not guilty verdict, reveals the source of his certainty as to why the boy is guilty.
Well? Say something! You lousy lousy bunch of bleeding hearts. You're not going to intimidate me. I'm entitled to my opinion. Rotten kids, you work your life out.
No. Not guilty. Not guilty.
After 19 minutes of watching this man yell this and that about the obvious guilt of the boy, he finally breaks down and shows us his true motives. In the mugginess of a summer rainstorm, he shows that it is the abandonment of his son that has led him to this prejudice. You see, the writer of this movie, at least in my opinion, meant for us to consider what it means to be a good man, or better yet, what it means to be a good human. The writer, Reginald Rose, gave us 12 different archetypes of man. Each one has his own motives, his own thoughts, and his own biases and prejudices. When given a task that is meant to purify the truth, and to enact justice, and to bear upon idealism, most of these men were certain that a boy was guilty of killing his father, and were ready to send him to the electric chair. This isn't inherently good or bad, and ultimately we don't know if the boy is guilty. We were not shown the murderer in the movie. We were only given the clues and left to sort it out on our own. It's the surprising amount of prejudice we found in these archetypes that demonstrates the morality, or rather the immorality, of this initial decision, and just how valuable the self-acknowledged uncertainty and the leadership of juror number 8 is. It is these that are the central messages of the film, that humans, in group, are often beset by vices of bias and of unreflective thought. And it asks us to reflect upon the value of people like juror number 8, who hold to noble ideals and lead with empathy and compassion. How rare are these kinds of men and women? To sum up, let's return to the very first shot of 12 Angry Men. That the administration of justice is the firmest pillar of good. Good what? Good men of good women? That's what I think they're trying to say. That when we're faced with the dwarfing size of ideals, and we react in different ways, it is more common than not that we trick ourselves into the conjured certainties of bias and acquiescence, instead of trying to do the right thing. This has been 12 Angry Men.